Welcome to Facing the Mirror. This is the place where we stop spending all of our energy analyzing everybody else and start asking the harder question: what is happening inside of me? Today, we're talking about one of the most exhausting relationship dynamics I see: the anxious avoidant trap. One person reaches, the other retreats. The reaching gets stronger, the retreat gets stronger. One person says, "Why won't you talk to me?" The other person says, "Why can't you just leave me alone?" One experiences distance as abandonment, and the other experiences pursuit as pressure. And both people become convinced that the other person is the problem. But here's where we're going to go deeper. Because attachment theory can explain your behavior, it cannot become your excuse for continuing it. I have anxious attachment. That does not excuse controlling behavior. I'm avoidant does not excuse emotional neglect. My nervous system is activated does not mean that everyone around you is responsible for regulating it. Understanding the wound is important. Eventually, though, you have to stop just studying the wound and start changing what you do when the wound gets touched. And that requires facing the shadow. So today, we're going there. You may ask yourself, what is the anxious avoidant dynamic? So, attachment styles are essentially strategies that we developed around connection, not necessarily consciously. A child doesn't sit down and say, I think I'll develop anxious attachment. They adapt, they learn, they observe, and they figure out what brings connection and what threatens it. If connection was inconsistent, you may have learned to monitor it constantly. Is mom okay? Is dad angry? Are they leaving? Did I do something wrong? How do I get them to come back? And that child can become an adult who monitors relationships constantly. The text gets shorter, the tone sounds different, your partner takes longer to respond. They seem quieter tonight, and suddenly your body is sounding an alarm. Something is wrong. And on the other side, if closeness came with criticism, intrusion, emotional unpredictability, rejection, or expectations you couldn't meet, you may have learned something different. That distance feels safer, so you handle things yourself. You minimize your needs, you don't depend on people. And when someone gets emotionally close, your system may interpret intimacy as pressure rather than connection. Then these two people meet. And sometimes there is incredible chemistry. Why? Well, because we don't always confuse familiarity with health. Sometimes we confuse familiarity with attraction. Your nervous system recognizes something, and it's not necessarily something good, it's something familiar. The anxious person encounters somebody emotionally difficult to reach, and some part of them says, I know this game. And the avoidant person encounters somebody intensely pursuing connection, and some part of them says, I know this game too. And welcome to the dance. So let's talk about the part that people don't really like discussing. Because anxious attachment, it gets presented sympathetically, but it's something a little bit different. I feel that quite often we can understand that there is pain underneath it. I mean, that's an absolute. But pain doesn't mean that there isn't a shadow behavior. An anxious person might say, well, I just love deeply. Okay, maybe. And, sometimes though, what we're calling love is really hypervigilance. And sometimes what you're calling communication is reassurance-seeking. And sometimes what you're calling fighting for the relationship is refusing to accept another person's boundary. And sometimes what you're calling loyalty is self-abandonment. And sometimes people-pleasing isn't nearly as selfless as we'd like to believe. And that one usually stings. Because people-pleasing can contain an unspoken contract. I will do everything for you, and therefore you won't leave me. I will make your life easier, and therefore you will choose me. I will anticipate your needs, and therefore you'll meet mine. And nobody agreed to that contract. You wrote it privately. Then resentment shows up when they don't fulfill their side of an agreement they never knew existed. And that's shadow. Overfunctioning can also become control. If I manage everything, if I anticipate everything, if I fix everything, if I become indispensable, maybe you can't leave. Now we're getting somewhere. This doesn't mean you're malicious. It means you're afraid. But fear-driven behavior can still become controlling. And that's why accountability matters. Now, let's turn the mirror around. Avoidant attachment has its own stories. I don't need anybody. I'm just independent. I don't like drama. I need peace. Maybe all that's true, or maybe intimacy terrifies you. Maybe you've learned to call emotional distance peace. Maybe you're incredibly skilled at identifying everyone else's emotional dysfunction because intellectualizing their behavior keeps you from examining yours. Maybe you're attracted to people until they actually need something emotionally from you, and then suddenly they're too much. Avoidance strategies often protect a deeper belief. If you really know me, I'll disappoint you. Or, if I need you, you can hurt me. Or, if I let you close enough, I will lose myself. So emotional independence becomes armor. Stonewalling becomes armor. Sarcasm becomes armor. Busyness becomes armor. Even spirituality can become armor. I've detached. No, sometimes you haven't detached. You've shut down. There is a huge difference. Healthy detachment still allows connection. Emotional shutdown removes you from it. And if you're repeatedly disappearing emotionally whenever intimacy becomes uncomfortable, you don't get to simply call everybody else needy. At some point, you have to examine why another human being having emotional needs feels threatening to you. If we get into the pursuit-retreat cycle, this is the part that really makes this dynamic so brutal. Both people's protection strategies create evidence for the other's fear. The anxious partner senses distance. Their nervous system says you're losing them, so they pursue. They text, they ask, they explain, they demand answers, they try harder. The avoidant person's nervous system experiences that pursuit as pressure, and so they retreat. They become quieter. They ask for space. They shut down. They may become defensive. And the anxious person's system sees the retreat and says, see, I knew that they were leaving. So pursuit increases. The avoidant person's system says, see, I knew closeness would suffocate me. So distance increases. And congratulations, both people have just created the exact relationship they were terrified of having. That's shadow in motion. Projection happens when something happening internally gets assigned externally. So instead of, I'm terrified of being abandoned, it becomes, you're abandoning me. Instead of, I feel overwhelmed by intimacy, it becomes, you're too needy. Instead of, I don't know how to tolerate uncertainty, it becomes, you need to tell me where this relationship is going right now. And instead of, I don't know how to communicate when I'm emotionally flooded, it becomes, you're impossible to talk to. Now, sometimes your partner actually is behaving badly. Accountability does not mean pretending everything is projection. If someone lies, they're lying. If someone cheats, they're cheating. If someone abuses you, that's abuse. Shadow work is not taking responsibility for someone else's behavior. It's asking, why am I doing what I'm doing in response to it? Now that's your territory. Radical self-accountability, I think, draws in, one of the most powerful questions that we can learn to ask in any relationship. It's not, how do I get them to stop doing this? But what is this bringing up in me? Those questions sound similar, but they are completely different. One puts your emotional state in somebody else's hands. The other brings you back to yourself. Maybe they haven't texted you back. Your immediate thought might be, well, they don't care. Slow down. What happened? They haven't responded. What your nervous system does what is your chest may tighten. Your stomach drops. So now you check your phone. What story appeared? They're losing interest. There was somebody else. I said something wrong. I'm going to be abandoned. Now ask, what do I actually know? And that's where the healing starts. It's not by pretending you aren't anxious. By separating the feeling from the conclusion, your feelings are real. Your interpretation may not be. And that distinction will save you from a lot of unnecessary suffering. So when you're activated, thinking harder isn't always the answer. Your body needs evidence that you are safe enough to slow down. So put both feet on the ground. Notice the pressure underneath them. Look around the room. Actually look. Find 5 things that you can see. Notice where your body is touching the chair. Relax your jaw. Drop your shoulders. Now breathe in slowly. And let the exhale last slightly longer than the inhale. And do that again. You are not trying to erase the emotion. You're creating enough space between the emotion and the behavior that you can choose what happens next. Now ask yourself, what am I feeling? Then, what am I afraid this means? And finally, what do I actually know right now? That third question matters because activated attachment systems are incredible storytellers. They can take 3 dots on a text message and turn them into an entire documentary. Your job isn't to shame yourself for that. Your job is to stop treating every story as evidence. The harder truth about healing is that secure attachment isn't getting somebody else to behave perfectly enough that you're not triggered. That's impossible. Secure attachment is developing enough internal stability that activation doesn't automatically control your behavior. You can feel anxiety without chasing. You can need space without disappearing. You can feel rejected without retaliating. You can feel overwhelmed without stonewalling. And you can ask for reassurance without demanding it. You can set boundaries without punishment. You can love someone without abandoning yourself. And you can lose somebody without losing yourself. That last one is huge because sometimes the deepest attachment fear isn't what if they leave, it's who will I become if they do? And that is the relationship that you need to strengthen, and that's the relationship with yourself. Before you leave this episode, I want you to sit with one question, and don't answer it quickly. Don't answer it based on what your partner did, and definitely don't turn it into an analysis of your ex. Just bring it back to you. What part of my partner's behavior am I hyper-focused on to avoid looking at my own internal discomfort? Maybe you're watching their distance because you don't want to face your fear of abandonment. Maybe you're criticizing their neediness because you don't want to face your fear of vulnerability. Maybe you're obsessing over whether they'll choose you because you haven't asked why you continue choosing relationships where you feel chronically uncertain. That's the mirror. And facing the mirror isn't about blaming yourself. It's about refusing to remain powerless in your own life. You cannot control whether somebody becomes emotionally available. You cannot control whether somebody chooses you. You cannot control whether somebody heals. But you can decide whether you're going to keep allowing your wounds to choose your relationships for you. Until next time, keep facing the mirror, because the patterns we refuse to look at are usually the ones running the show.